Courtney and I, when we first got married, we were looking for a house. And before we got married, we were looking. So when we got married, we'd have one. And I found this house. Thought it was a good deal. It was a log cabin. Okay, it was just built. The outside of it was finished. Okay, the bank had repoed it. The people had run out of money to actually finish it. So we bought it from the bank. And I thought, hey, we're going to save money because it actually came with the supplies to actually finish the inside. And I thought, we'll buy this. We'll finish the inside, me and a friend. 3 weeks, we'll be in this thing. Okay. So I'm glad you laughed because a year later, finally, seriously, we get in it. And there's, as I'm thinking about this, and I'm getting ready to buy it, I'm picturing myself, seriously, there's 2 sawhorses, there's a board, and I don't know why I don't have a power tool, but I got a handsaw. I'm sawing. Courtney's giving me lemonade. It's going to be really easy. It's going to be really neat. But here's the thing, about finishing a house. I had never done drywall before, and I about cut this thumb off, doing that. I mean, it's hard. You just can't just do it. I mean, you got to, and then electrical stuff. You can get shocked, and it hurts. We were staining the floor. We put hardwood floor down. We were coming to the end. Courtney was helping me stain it. It was really hot, 100 degrees outside. We hadn't had our central air unit and all that stuff. It wasn't hooked up. It's getting really hot. And I ran outside and I threw up all over the place because of the smell of the stain and all that. Terrible, terrible idea. I'd never do that again. But it wasn't as neat and easy, as I thought. Running is one of those things. When I think about running, we were driving yesterday actually, and Keegan was with me, and Marcy Stewart, she was running for the school. They were practicing, and we saw her. We were on our way to Walmart. Her and another guy was running behind her, and they started to run around the theater. So we pulled around the other side. Keegan rolls his window down, and he says to her, "Hey, what's your pace?" So she's smiling, and she goes, "Slow." Right behind her is this guy. She doesn't see him. We do. His head is down, and he looks like he is about to die. So Marcy is what I pictured, what I would want to be running. Breeze through my hair, listen to music, smiling. But, I'm more like this other guy. It's not as easy as what I think. So with that, sometimes when we become Christians and in Christianity and following Jesus, we look at it and we want to reach the lost, from the comfort of our own homes, right? Or from the church. And we want to do that. And it kind of looks neat and it kind of looks organized. But if you look at the Bible and you read about Jesus and his ministry, it's messy. Where there's ministry, there's mess. He's in people's lives. He's in the trenches with them. People that don't know him, people that don't act like him, he's helping them. And when we're finishing up this series, Love Where You Are. And today we're talking about love where you go. So, love where you go. No matter where you are, with the people, love where you go. So, first thing to realize about Jesus, we're going to look at his life and how do we do this? How do we organize through the mess and love people? Well, if we look at Jesus, the first thing I want to say is Jesus cared for everyone. Okay, he loved everyone. So if we read in Luke 8, it says, "Now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house, because his only daughter, a girl about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on the way, so he's going to the synagogue leader's house, an important person. As Jesus is on his way, he runs into crowds. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. Immediately, her bleeding stopped. 'Who touched me?' Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, 'Master, the people are crowding and pressing you.'" So Jesus, there's an important person that has showed up and it says that he pleaded with him. He was telling Jesus, "Hey, my daughter is sick. She's going to die. Can you come and help me?" He's a synagogue leader. He's an important person. Jesus goes with him on the way. Someone touches his cloak and he notices. Now, listen, today, okay, say after service, a helicopter, it lands outside. Out of it, guys in black suits come out. They come through this door. They walk down and they look at Ryan Linton and they say this: "It's Donald Trump." And with Donald Trump is Chris Tomlin. They're both there. And Donald Trump, he says, Chris has been telling me about your music. He's been listening to it, and I want you to play for my son's birthday party, and it's today, but we got to go now, and we'll fly you there. And then Ryan gets up, and he's like, you'd have to be an idiot not to do that, right? So he's walking with Chris Tomlin. He's walking with Donald Trump. He's going to play at Donald Trump's son's birthday party, but on the way, my daughter Paisley is crying, and she runs up and she hugs Ryan and says, I have something going on. I need to talk to you. What would happen? She comes up, Ryan pushes her out of the way and says, hey, kid, you're bothering me, and he walks on. I want to say I don't think he would do that. I think he would say, hey, listen here, Donnie, you're going to have to wait a second because this little girl needs me and I'm going to help her. And that's what Jesus does. Now, this isn't the leader. But this is an important person. He's on his way and he stops to help somebody that would be considered the least of these. In society, she wasn't very important. He cared for her. It says this, but Jesus said, someone touched me. I know that power has gone from me. Then the woman, seeing that she could not be unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet in the presence of all the people. So, and I love that line. Listen, she comes to Jesus, touches him. He stops. There's crowds everywhere. It's messy. It's crazy. He wants to see. You got this person over here, the leader, wanting his daughter healed, but he stops to see who touched him. And it says this, she knew that she could not be unnoticed. She knew that Jesus was going to pursue her, that he was going to find her. And in our lives, there's a lot of unnoticed people in this world. There are widows. There are orphans. There are people that we should love and make time for. And I was in college in Evansville. I told you, me and my best friend Ryan, we went at the same time, and we went to this church. It was a Westland church in Evansville, and we met this guy, and his name was Bob Mattox. Okay, Bob Mattox looked like Mr. Magoo, except he had really dark hair. And Bob, intellectually, in real life, he was kind of like a third grader. Okay, so we got to know Bob some, and then Ryan invited him to lunch with us, and we would take him out to lunch after church, and we would kind of hang out with him, and that was my Christian thing there, that we were hanging out with him. One day we're going to hang out on campus. He says, "Come over, we're going to hang out." We're at campus, going over to his dorm. He says this. He says, "I've invited Bob. He's going to hang out with us." And I say, "I am I'm not going to hang out with Bob on campus. No way." I said, "Are you crazy?" And Bob is already on his way, so we're hanging out with Bob, And I didn't want to do that. I was okay. I was comfortable, going out with him to eat, maybe after church, but hanging out with him on campus. No joke. First time we hang out with him, all right? We're on campus. There's a group of college girls over here. Bob sees them, okay? I promise. He goes, "Hey, ladies." They look over. He spits his teeth out of his mouth into his hand. And then a magic trick, he pops them back in. And I say, "Bob, if you are looking for a girlfriend, they are too young for you. And if you were going to write a book of how to get a girl, that would be on how not to get a girl. That would be on the top 5 things for you not to do." And Bob was he was this character. He was a funny guy. And the more that I got to know him, the more I loved him. He wasn't a project. It was genuine. We wanted to hang out with Bob. He became one of our friends. Bob he was a prankster. My friend Ryan would sleep with covers over his head, and he would shove his face into the corner of the mattress. So in the dorm, there's bed here and a bed here. Sometimes I would come, I'd sleep on the floor. Bob started spending the night on campus with us. Okay, so Bob is spending the night, with Ryan. Ryan has this conversation with me when Bob's not around. He goes, "Bob snores so loud. It's he's right in my face." He said, it's so loud. So one day I'm coming over. It's late at night. I'm going to stay in his dorm room with him and Bob. He says, "We're probably going to be asleep when you get here, but that's okay. You can just sleep on the floor." So I show up. I open the door, and then Ryan is covered with his blankets. He's over here asleep. Bob is standing right over him like this, making this loud snoring sound. And I said, "Bob, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm playing a joke." And I said, "Well, how long have you been doing this?" And he said, "About a month." So Ryan had no idea that Bob was actually, because he said, "It sounds like it's right in my face," So Bob was a really awesome guy. Ryan really, God worked on my heart, but he was the one that like invited him to hang out with us. And here's the thing I found out about Bob, and I think it might have broke Ryan's heart, and this is how this all started. But Bob has to take this certain medicine. He had to give himself shots. Sometimes he would give himself too many, and then he would call the doctor and say, hey, I've tried to kill myself, and then people would come over. He would do that, and he would be in the hospital, and it seemed like he tried to take his own life. And what we discovered was Bob did that so people would come and see him. Like, so people would come and talk to him. So people would notice him. This guy is one of those guys, like, unnoticed. Like, I would have not have noticed him. Like, I definitely wouldn't have had him come on campus with me if it wasn't for my friend. And there are tons of people out there like that. I mean, who is it out there that is by themselves? Who is lonely? I mean, Bob had, like, he was going to this church. The church probably ran like 300 people, and nobody really talked to him, and there's people out there like that. Jesus, when he finds this lady, okay, then he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. He's not mad that she's done that. He calls her daughter, and he's healed her, tells her to go in peace. Then he goes to the religious leader's house, and he cares for his daughter that was sick and heals her. Jesus cared. It didn't matter if you were homeless. It didn't matter if you worked in a corporate tower. He loved and he cared for everybody. Next is this. So, Jesus cared for everyone, and Jesus had real compassion. Compassion is an action word, okay? So in the Bible, in these verses that you see here, you see that Jesus, it will say that he was filled with compassion, and then it's followed by an and. Or Jesus is filled with compassion, and then there's some action that happens. Jesus was filled with compassion, and then he did, because compassion is an action statement. Don't confuse feeling compassionate with being compassionate. Don't think you're going when you're really overthinking. We have this contest among us guys in the office, and Frank calls it Buff Magnets. I like to call it Project Buff Daddy. But, like, we're trying to get in shape, okay? So we want to lose weight. We want to get in shape. We're taking it serious. We stood on a scale, took pictures of it, body fat, all that. We were trying to figure that out. So with that, like, I read this article in Men's Health talking about this guy who's kind of like me. He's kind of chubby. And then he ate, like, it was broccoli, rice, and chicken. He did that for 4 months. Okay? He was ripped. I mean, after. And I thought, I didn't do that. I can do that. I can eat that. I have guys at the work, though, that say, hey, you want to go to the Cheesecake Factory? And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to go to the Cheesecake Factory. Sounds better than broccoli. And so with that, and I do the same thing. I go into Frank's office and I say, hey, brought you a Reese's today. And then, we're trying to sabotage each other. Here's the deal, though. Like, I think I've gained more weight than I have lost on this diet, because I think the guys we're all trying to get each other, and we can't turn it down. My intentions are good, but my actions are weak. And sometimes when we have compassion, but we have no action. What is it that bothers you? What injustice do you see in the world? What are things that you are compassionate about, but you have done nothing for? Because whatever bothers you, whatever breaks your heart, those are the places you should move. God has put them on your heart. The Holy Spirit has convicted you. Make a move. I went to Africa, and I've told you that before, and while I was there, like, on the way, I could not have imagined the conditions. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, so you go there, people are living in huts. I have pictures. There's kids everywhere. So if you put out this first picture, I mean, it was pretty normal to see, like, this on the screen here in a second. So, but anyway, so there are kids all around us all the time. They didn't see many white people, okay? So when they did see a white people, it was like he was a rock star. Like, they would crowd around you. They would want to touch you, want you to hug them. They'd want to play with your hair. They'd want to do all that stuff, And as I'm watching, like, the average age of people live there to be about 55. So I was like an old man. There we go. Like, so you can see people here. They're close to a lake, and then you go to the next one. And then, so they're always around. And then you go to the next one. So, and then So it's just kind of normal that they're always around. And as we're walking, we see kids that are shirtless running around. One had like this big hump on his stomach, and it was like, I don't know what it was, but medically here, like I think we would fix that. I don't know if it was a hernia or if it was a rupture or whatever. Another kid, like his legs were not developed right, and he couldn't really walk correctly. There were kids that would die, like you'd hear from parents because of things like water, like they didn't have access to clean water, and if they didn't have this water, they would die, and if you gave it to them, like sometimes it would kill them. And all the while, like I'm seeing this, I'm thinking, man, like I'm really grateful for like what I have at home, and in other words, I was really grateful that this wasn't happening to me. Now, that changed one day. As we were there, like we would speak, to the people, and the missionary that we were with, he was speaking, and I was kind of observing, the people around me, and there's this girl, she's like 10 years old, holding her sister that's like 4, has her on her hip, Then she has this thing that looks like corn on the cob. It's about this big. There's nothing on it, nothing. And she keeps gnawing at that, and then she'll give it to her sister to gnaw on. I mean, they're trying to get something out of this because there's not a lot of food there. They're hungry. So I'm watching that, and something like hit me right in the gut because as I'm watching, I see this 4-year-old that she's holding. She's trying to feed her, and through her tattered clothes, because when Goodwill can't use something, they'll send it over there. They'll give it to these kids. But through her tattered clothes, I can see that it's this Dora outfit. And it's the same Dora outfit that my daughter has. Seeing that just for a second, like it was like my daughter. Like this was happening to her. So I think, like, what would I want? What would I want? And I cry and I'm emotional, so I left, the area, and I wanted to get by myself and process this. And, like, if that was my daughter, I'd want somebody to help her. I wouldn't want them to say, hey, too bad for you, like, I'm going to go back home. And, and I had this, like, something inside of me changed. Like, I didn't want to just observe that. I just didn't want to go back home. I wanted to help. So we get back home, and my wife has a way of hitting me in the gut sometimes, and I tell her about what happened and this and that, and we start, like, we have, for every kid that we have a compassion kid, like, and we request Uganda. Now, you might say, well, I don't know how much money actually goes to those kids, whatever. Like, we were there, we've seen it, we know that they help them, we know that they get them food, we don't know what else to do right now because, like, just to go over there is thousands of dollars. And sometimes God has pulled on my heart, like, to go there as a missionary, and, like, I fight with that. But it moved us in a way that we would actually try to do something. We didn't want to overthink it. Like, we didn't want to strategize so much that we didn't move. And I think sometimes we tend to do that, right? We sit on it, we think about it. We want to be strategic, but it's overly planned. We need to plan, but we need to do. Whatever you're compassionate about, remember that is an action word. Mark 8:25, listen, it says, this is Jesus talking, I have compassion for these people. They've already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way. So, Jesus, with bread, and fish, he feeds all these people. So Jesus sees that they're hungry. He's compassionate, and he goes into action. Matthew 14:14 says, when he went ashore, he saw a large crowd and felt compassion on them and healed their sickness. Again, he sees, he's compassionate. He does. The Lord saw her. His heart went out to her and said, don't cry. Then he went up and touched her bear, and they were carrying him on, and the bear stood still. He said, young man, I say to you, get up. The dead man sat up and began to talk. So Jesus sees this person. He goes. He heals him. He's compassionate. Then he gives the man back to his mother. Moved with compassion, Jesus touched their eyes, and immediately they had their sight. Jesus, when he was filled with compassion, moved. He did stuff to help. And, as a Christian, I want to be somebody that moves. He didn't say, like, hey, like, this person here, I see that they're broken. I see that they need healed. I'm going to go home and tell my friends about this, and I'm going to think about it a little bit, and then maybe, and keep doing that. No, he did it. He went He was with them. Last thing is this. Jesus got messy. Jesus was in the trenches with people. I mean, it wasn't this neat thing, you know. He was there. He was living with them. In Matthew 28:18 to 20, the Great Commission says, Then Jesus came to them and said, All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples in all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I'm with you always, to the very ends of the age. You know, and here's the thing, like, you know, you might be wondering, like, what is God's will for my life? Well, I mean, the Great Commission, it is to go. I don't know where. I don't know, you know, if you're going to go overseas or if you're going to go next door, but it definitely is to go, and it's to do something. You know, but sometimes we don't want to, right? We want to be safe. We want something that's familiar. I interviewed a while back, it's probably like almost 10 years ago, the Bahama Youth Network wanted me to go on one of their rural islands and, like, kind of be a missionary there. You know, I know it's the Bahamas, it was very rural. And so I was talking to the lady, and the first thing I said, I got kids. Is there tribes that are going to try to eat my kids or something? You know, I'm not going there if that's going to be the case. You know, I mean, safety was my first thought. You know, people that we're familiar with, that we know. When I was at the church in Illinois, I met a guy, his name was Dennis, okay? Dennis, our friend, looked like Chris Farley, okay? Looked just like him. And Dennis was, when he was like a junior high kid, his dad died of a heart attack, okay? They lived in this small trailer. They didn't have a lot of money. And then, when he was a senior in high school, his mom died of cancer. So Dennis, before he even graduated, had both parents die, okay? He has to drop out of high school to get a job to take care of his little sister that is still there. Okay, true story. This sounds crazy, but his sister then gets cancer. And now, you know, and sometimes, like, when you see homeless people, you think, what are they doing? How did this even happen? I mean, I could very well see that happening to him. Circumstances were bad. He couldn't control it. You know, now he works. The only job he ever has, he works at a gas station, not making very much money to try to take care of his family. And Dennis is somebody that, like, you know, I don't know if I seen him in a crowd, I'd hang out with him. But Darren, the pastor there, like, he pursued Dennis. He invited him to church. So, and it was messy. Like, he invited Dennis over and had Dennis live with him for a while, and the sister. And he taught Dennis how to drive so he'd get his license, you know, for his job. And in the midst of that, Dennis wrecks Darren's car, okay? So there's that. You know, Dennis, as we got there, like, we start hanging out with him. He comes over and he eats with us. We're getting to know him. He looks like a shaggy dog, so Courtney cuts his hair so he can try to go get a job. And then he calls us one day. Remember, like, this, he's like a kid. Like, I mean, he's had to grow up really fast. He doesn't know much of anything. He calls us one day. He said, my furnace isn't working. He said, but we got a lot of blankets, so I think I'll be all right. I said, Dennis, it's going to be negative temperatures tomorrow. Like, you know, your pipes are going to freeze. They're going to break. They're going to bust. But he doesn't even think about that. He doesn't know. We go, we buy him a heater. You know, there's things that we've helped him with tires on his car. And all this stuff, good stuff I'm telling you that I'm doing. There are other times that I have not. You know, but with him, like, he was somebody that we love, but I also wanted to punch sometimes because he would just, you know, sometimes he didn't get things. It's not his fault. You know, and Jesus, you know, when he's dealing with people, when he's dealing with the disciples and he's doing all these things, it's messy. I'm sure sometimes he wanted to, you know, he got frustrated, but, like, he was there and he was with them. Dennis got baptized. Like, so I asked him one time, I said, hey, Dennis, why don't you, like, move from here? Because in Illinois, the price is high. Taxes are so crazy high. I was like, you're going to be a lot better, like, you know, going somewhere else and, like, trying to find a place. And I even tried to get him to move here when we came here. And he said, I would leave in a second, and I promise. He said, but the church here, I just can't leave him. He loved those people. Those people were his family. They were there for him. They were in the trenches with him. So, there's people in your lives. You know, you have a Dennis in your life. You have a Bob. You have those people, and God calls us to love them. You know, He calls us as we go to discover these people, to recognize what's going on and spend time with them. Not to be so outwardly or inwardly focused, but to be outwardly focused, to go and share His love. I'll close with this one last story. My favorite author, one of them, his name's Donald Miller. He wrote Blue Like Jazz, and he writes different stuff. He's telling this story. It was at a convention of the first time he had met his dad. He had never met his dad before, and he was older. And he didn't really like his dad because he just never met him. He abandoned him. One day he gets a call on the phone, and it's his dad. And his dad says, "I would like to meet you." And Donald goes, "Okay, we can meet." And then he said, you know, I don't know if he ever read my books, but he said, I've said a lot of bad things about him, you know, as I'm writing through the years. And so he gets in a taxi, you know, to go meet his dad at a coffee shop. So in this taxi, the taxi driver says, you know, what are you doing today? And Donald said, well, never met my dad, tells the taxi driver. I'm going to meet him for the first time. And then he said that the taxi driver makes a weird request. He says to Donald, when you meet your dad for the first time, can I watch? And he says, sure. So he goes, you know, he sees his dad like through the window of the coffee shop. He goes in there. He said he's overwhelmed. He hugs his dad. He starts crying, you know, and just for a little bit, like his dad is there with him. And then he said they're having this moment. They're wrapped, you know, he's looking over his dad's shoulder, and on like the coffee shop window, he sees a face pressed against it, and it's like the taxi driver. Like he's looking in to see. And he told that story and to say this, like, as Christians, like that, you know, that taxi driver did the most important thing. And as Christians, the most important thing we can do is bring people to their Father. People that need it, people that had never met Him, the lonely, you know, the widows, the orphans, like taking care of those, showing them Jesus because we love and we know Him and we know what He can do. So here in a second, I'm going to pray, and then Ryan is going to lead us in a worship song. If you are here today and you don't have a church home, like, you can come forward. Webby's going to be up here. We'd love you to come here. If you've never been baptized, maybe you don't know Jesus and you want to come forward and you want to, you know, do that, we can do that today. Like if you're, you know, maybe this Love Where You Are thing, there's some things that you're dealing with. Frank's going to be back there. I'm going to be back there. You can come to us and we will pray for you.